sanctuary city. You have responded by accusing him of lying about you and are also accusing him of being too far right for the district. From your perspective, how are voters supposed to identify the truth?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me be very clear right now. I do not support sanctuary cities. I think that we've seen this play out before. This isn't the first time that we've seen this come about. And my opponent is simply lying to folks. He's lied about this. He's lied about other issues. But let me kind of back up, because I think we should talk about where the root cause of this all came from, and then we can kind of get to what we need to talk about here. So one of the things that he pushes is an article that came out in the News Herald that said, Downriver legislator leading charge against proposed bills prohibiting sanctuary cities. And this is where this all stemmed from, and they have my picture there. And it's very much not what it seems when it looks at the article. There was, back in 2019, this was 4 years ago now almost, where the legislature was pushing bills in order to ban sanctuary cities. Now, does anyone want to guess how many sanctuary cities we have in Michigan? 0. So when we talk about sanctuary cities, that was a big issue that came up because my whole thing was the legislature is there to fix issues that we have currently, not issues that we perceive in the future. So my opposition to this was that we needed to make sure that we were focusing on the issues at hand for Michigan residents at the time. And that continues to be my position on this. We don't need to make up issues that are current. We need to make sure that we're being focused on the issues at hand, the kitchen table issues. People can't afford their prescription drugs. People can't afford their groceries. People can't afford their gas. These are the issues we should be focused on instead of making up issues. Ultimately, the bills did not go anywhere. They were not voted on because, again, they were a waste of time. Now, again, I want to restate, I do not support sanctuary cities. I do not support sanctuary cities at all. However, I think we have to be very clear about what that was and exactly what the time that we were wasting in the legislature when those bills came up at the time. So I just want to be very clear on that, and I hope that my opponent sees this tonight so that he can stop lying to folks and my position on this issue. So, thank you.
Our next question, your opponent also is accusing you of working with and for Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib to enact a leftist agenda. What do you have to say about that?
Well, these are great questions. I think one of the things that we've seen come out of my opponent again was trying to label me as someone who is entwined with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. And let me just say this. Let me put this plainly. When I was in high school, I did an internship for at the time, State Representative Rashida Tlaib. Since then, have not worked for her. Now, that has been something that my opponent has tried to connect me to, saying that my policy is the same, or saying that we have the same thoughts as the Congresswoman. I could say this right now. There is very little that I agree with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. There is a lot that's happening on the national stage that we see. There's a lot that's happening on the state stage that we see. And there's a lot of things happening on the local level. But at the end of the day, my politics and my positions on issues that I have led on in the legislature cannot be more different than what we've seen her do on the federal level. So I just want to make that distinction clear. If I've interned for someone, doesn't necessarily mean I agree with all the positions that they take and the different position that they hold. I am not in Congress. I'm a state representative, and I'm proud to be a state representative for our community, and I've always led on the issues that matter for our community. So, in order to try to attach me to another politician, it's disingenuous, again, misleading voters, and again, Mr. DeSanta, I would appreciate if you stop lying to folks about my positions and how I lead in the state legislature.
Our next question, how will you work to root corruption out of Lansing politics and make sure that there is a real transparency about conflicts of interest that might affect leaders' decisions?
Yeah, this is something that we've seen quite a bit lately with legislators and financial disclosure. I think one of the things, and this doesn't get a lot of coverage, but every year since I was elected in 2019, and I have voluntarily done a legislator financial disclosure form. So that discloses all of the assets I have, all of the properties that I own. It makes sure that I'm putting everything out there to show folks exactly what financial interests I have. Now, that's not something that's required by the legislature currently. This is all voluntarily done by myself and a few other legislators. But I can say this, in politics in general, what we've seen in government and service that we've seen is that folks have become more and more skeptical about their politicians and their leaders because they don't know what financial interests they have. And they don't know why they're running for these positions and how they can enrich themselves in some of these positions that they're running for. So I think it's important that we make it required for our legislators in Lansing to publicly disclose their financial interests so that we know exactly who they're working for and who they're not working for. Because I think it's important that we're pushing that in order to get folks to trust who they're voting for and the candidates who are putting up before them. So I think it's an important thing. Financial disclosure is at the top of the list when we're talking about rooting out corruption. And we need to make sure that we're promoting transparency in government whenever we can.
Thank you. Our next question, do you believe that legalizing cannabis for recreational use has been good for our state? And is there legislation you still would like to see regarding the Michigan cannabis industry or the consumption of cannabis in Michigan?
Sure. So that's a great question. We've seen two different proposals in the statewide level. One of them was for the medicinal use of marijuana, which passed overwhelmingly in the state. And then we saw a second proposal more recently about the recreational use of marijuana in the state. Both of them passed by large margins. One of the things that we've seen over the years is that communities are opting in. Communities have the option to opt in or opt out. We're seeing quite a few of them opt in. We're seeing quite a few of them opt out. It just depends on what location and what community, what they want for their community. I think it's important to know that I'm a big supporter of local government. So when I was on city council, I always wanted to make sure that the state and the federal government weren't telling us what we should be doing in our communities. So I think it's an important thing that our local communities have the authority to do what's right for their community, whether they opt in or opt out. Second, I just wanted to say this. I am a supporter of cannabis. I'm a supporter of medicinal and recreational cannabis. And I think that it's shown over the years that these communities have received quite a bit of money due to it. But also we're seeing a trend where there's a lot of locations are closing now because of oversaturation of the market. So it's a double-sided coin here when we talk about what it looks like for every community. I am a supporter of provisioning centers. I'm a supporter of the industry in general, but I think we have to make sure that we're putting that to the communities and they're doing what's best for each community on the individual level. There's no one size fits all. I think that that's been clear over the years.
Thank you. Our next question. Right now, we are seeing an increase in worker attempts to organize, especially in the service industry. How would you create a fair economy where workers and industry can prosper?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for that. And I think I mentioned earlier during the start of this, I come from a very working class family. My grandfather's a UAW member for many years. My dad's a Teamster for many years. And I think one of the biggest things that I've recently read, actually on Fox News, believe it or not, I actually saw that union memberships are going through the roof. This is a trend that we've seen reverse itself going into it, and also the approval rating of unions has been at an all-time high this year. So I am a big supporter of our unions and their ability to organize, especially in the service industry where we see that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to support our workers in the service industry. So I think it's a great thing that we're seeing more organized labor. I think it's a great thing that we're seeing more people join organized labor across the district. And I want to say this, the new 29th district has the second largest union membership in the state. So this is a community in this 29th district from Taylor all the way down to Monroe, has one of the highest union card memberships in the state. And I think that's a great thing because working class folks, we know exactly what our needs are and what we need to do in Lansing, and it's really important to stay focused on those kitchen table issues, and that's exactly what I plan to
Thank you.